Hey everyone, welcome back to the Meme Team podcast. This is Sonia, where we break down the marketing strategies creating breakout cultural moments. This week, I'm welcoming back Martin O'Leary, head of marketing at Tap Payments, which is kind of like the Stripe of Middle East, and the writer of the Substack newsletter Uncharted. Welcome back, Martin.
Hey, Sonia, good to be back on.
So we're just going to quickly jump into it. ChatGPT has launched ads and they're not as obscene as the Anthropic ad made them seem. They're just kind of looking like, Google ads in line. They're, a little like neat and stuff. And a lot of companies are starting to use them, the bigger ones, and they're all kind of placed within the search. So, kind of what we expected, a little boring, if anything.
Yeah, I think it's a bit underwhelming. I think
Yeah.
they've gone too far in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I was hoping, a lot of people were debating that the issues with privacy,
Uh-huh.
OpenAI knowing everything about you. But
Uh-huh.
actually, from an advertising perspective, that's kind of maybe what you want. You want the ads
Right.
to be really relevant and personalized to you.
Mhm.
But I feel like just like a random banner ad, it feels like we're back in the 90s or
Yeah,
early
yeah, yeah.
2000s.
Yeah, so it's not completely random, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm traveling to here. Here's an Expedia ad, right? It is random in the sense that it doesn't really take into, consideration
Hmm.
what they know about you or what you've
Yeah,
previously asked. Obviously, a lot of context is missing from OpenAI just in general. That's kind of how, AIs work these days, where they don't really maintain that like same through line of the conversations that you've had. So it's only really within the context of the chat that you're having at that moment, which kind of sucks because, they can't really pull in everything else that you've ever discussed, knowing that in a previous chat you had asked specifically about a specific, travel place or a restaurant that you wanted to go to. Then like, how is it going to give you, that type of ad that's like more relevant to you? But I mean, when you pair it up against, Facebook, which has like a trove of like, personal data,
mhm.
demographic data on us, it is going to be underwhelming. Obviously, it's going to improve. This is just like the first level. The other thought I had was like maybe they're starting out this boring and bland in order to not freak people out, if that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
think they're sitting on the fence a bit, like kind of going
Hmm.
down the slippery slope, saying, "Okay,
Hmm.
here's ads. They're so boring and they're so safe, and in a year's time, they'll be digging
Hmm.
into your memory." So,
Yeah.
I think, I think it's just a starting point.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And then F1 is back next week, but the Netflix Drive to Survive show is dropping this week. But they released an ad featuring Damson Idris, who was the one of the leads in the F1 movie over the summer last year. Kind of, describing that F1 has changed because now they have new rules and regulations. There's new cars. So people are getting, super excited. But I thought it was a neat way of kind of tying back the movie. So it was like a nice co-brand situation. And then they also announced, I think it was last week, that it's not going to be F2, right? Because that's not the way that worked, but that the second F1 movie is starting to be in production. So that's super exciting there. And I did want to drop the little tidbit about Carlos and Thea, the little girl that created Sparkles the unicorn, who was like his mascot last year. They just took a little photo. So it's just showing that, they're really trying to bring it back to the fans, and acknowledge how much their involvement is helping the sport grow. Did you see any of this F1 content, Martin?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. So from an F1 content perspective, I've absolutely no clue. I don't watch the show, but I watched the movie, and
yeah,
I had two views on the movie. I watched it in the cinema and I watched it at home.
yeah.
And it's a cinema experience. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
same movie at home. It's really, I think the production quality is amazing, and I think the advertising. I don't remember the trailer that they released. That if you watched it on your say iPad or
Mm-hmm.
it had say kind of like a
The
ambient
haptic.
like vibrate
Mm-hmm.
haptic sounds. That's it
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, 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 yeah. This is also the year that Apple is taking over the F1, content and like where F1 is going to live. So I'll be curious to see if they, have any new technologies or innovations or insights that they'll be doing, or maybe it'll just kind of be like, OpenAI and kind of take it slow and then, grow into it as people kind of figure out the things that they can show, like different dashboards or different camera views, Anyway, I'll be looking forward to that next week. Awesome. So let's go into the Google Pomelli Photo Shoot. feature which launched last week and is kind of, taken over. Google Labs launched the Pomelli Photo Shoot, which is an AI tool that turns basic product snapshots into studio quality marketing images using their Nano Banana model. It's kind of one of the first features featuring AI that Google has launched that is different and that isn't just, Gemini baked into, your email or your photos or, asking basic like chat questions. It's targeting e-commerce sellers and small businesses. In order to kind of cut photography costs and compress, timelines of how long that, takes generally. I thought it was a smart play. I think it's like one of those things where people question like the value of it. Like, how important is it to take like perfect photos of like your product? It focuses specifically on product photography, in terms of like the accuracy and consistent lighting, brand safe backgrounds, versus broad creative generators. I know that we've seen, other companies use AI photos. Um, for me, the one that stands out is DoorDash because they've kind of started taking over the food dishes, right? Like, and just making it a little too like, clean and very clearly AI. I've seen people kind of complain about it because it's like, oh, it doesn't actually show what the actual food looks like. I prefer to see like the actual photos from like users of
Mhm.
like the dishes themselves. So I think that is going to be something that we're going to have to, face here, as people kind of, start going in that direction. I think another thing, that people kind of will have to keep an eye out is like, how much it's reverting to the mean of like, all those people participating and everything that is kind of cold from, I think it's probably pulling from, like their Google, shop, like storefronts, right? Where business owners have uploaded their own photos and kind of going in that direction. Um, yeah. So one thing to kind of like keep an eye out there is like, are you, separating your brand, from like what AI is creating for you? How well are you giving it prompts in order to make sure that it's still kind of keeping in line with your brand and your, your colors, the brand guidelines that you have. So that's something to kind of, keep an eye out for, going forward. But it's going to make it a lot easier for people because obviously it's going to like integrate with like Google Ads and their merchant center and position Google a little bit more to compete against Amazon, Shopify, and Adobe. So it's kind of taking on all of those. I think the biggest, one that we'll see going forward that's kind of changing it up will be Shopify, just because it's kind of, infringing on their, customer base. So it was interesting to me that that's the direction that they're going. But yeah, Martin, did you see this? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I've kind of got two takes on it. Like one is like kind of more for like say solopreneurs and small businesses that Google have kind of made it free to look like
Hmm.
everybody else. What they've given is a gift, but that gift is also kind of a trap.
Hmm.
The challenge a lot of these businesses are going to have is differentiation, and like the stock photo bar has just like the base has just got up a bit, so within 6 months they become the new stock photo if you don't do it well. I think, as you
Hmm.
mentioned, like you're going to have to put a lot more effort into like like your say your brand identity, your prompting, your style guides, where you differentiate. And I think the brands that like don't really use it to save money, but put the money they're saving into like say building distinctive assets will get a bit more out of the tool.
Hmm.
And my second take is Google have just so many AI tools now. It's hard to keep up
Hmm.
with them. It's like I feel like Google are one interface away from dominating the whole of AI,
Hmm.
because if you look at it, they're kind of integrated into everything in your daily life.
Hmm.
Gemini touches you multiple times a day, whether it's on Gmail, YouTube. Um,
I mean, even Google search, right?
yeah, exactly. And that's, yeah, exactly. And I think the product they're using here, it was Nano Banana Pro, right? And,
Hmm.
uh, and I think, you're probably going to touch on it a bit later, but it's like, the more you use these tools, the more you realize that the craft still matters, really
Hmm.
understanding, how to prompt. If you want to prompt like a really good photo shoot, you got to really know like the type of camera, the lens, the more say metadata you can put into the prompt, the better the output. So I don't think you're de-skilling here. You're just abstracting, but you're
Yeah.
going to create like different communities, people who use it to produce AI slop and people who use it to produce actually some pretty good work, I think.
Hmm. I mean, if anything, I don't necessarily see it being completely where you're cutting photographers out of the loop. It's just maybe you don't require as much, like, as many photos from them, A, and then B, as much
Exactly.
editing from them, right? So if
Yeah,
like the
you still need a
photographers,
baseline.
right, exactly. So it's like you need someone to at least take the first photos so that like the product actually shows up properly. And then from there, if anything, if the photographers become better at editing the product photos for you, then are you really cutting them out or just paying them for a new skill that they've got? Or, alternatively, you'll see, new people pop up that can take your, photographer's photos and create, product photos from that at different angles, at different colors, different backgrounds, and all
Mhm.
that. So it's again one of those things of like, what is the opportunity here for people to, learn new skills, learn how to prompt better, right? I
Yes.
don't think a lot of companies or solo businesses are going to be like, oh, let me go and like create this, and then that first version is going to be good enough quality for being online. Um, so, I mean, I think that's definitely gonna be a thing here. Even like the ones that like I saw, it's like people that I know are deep into AI and like no prompting.
I'm all for like say, companies giving tools to people who didn't have access. Like say, like if you're a solopreneur and you don't have the budget photographers, okay, this is a great tool. You can get you off the ground, get you started. But maybe I was just thinking that maybe it creates a whole different, like say opportunity.
Mhm,
Maybe you get like really good photographers teaming up with really good prompters, teaming
mhm,
up with really good say copywriters, producing very original brand assets for an initial say startup, and then their
mhm,
internal team then can adapt and say use those with say a pack of say really tailored prompts
mhm,
that would not have been thought of before. So you have like one really senior skill team producing an
mhm,
initial, like say, brand, say, like a say the next level brand guideline, including
mhm.
photography, and then the internal team uses that to say operationalize it internally. So we don't know. New opportunities might come out of it also.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing that this also reminds me of is how we go in like stages of different types of um what is it, like brand styles that are in style at the time, right? Like,
Mhm,
there was the time when, everybody had those like drawings and like the cartoons, right? And then that shifted over to rounder cartoons. And it seems like we're reverting back to having like photos of things be, photos of the product, with a certain style, certain lighting, like the hand holding, right? And I
mhm,
think there's that problem where it's like if we're adding AI to it, then it's like everything is going to be shifting towards like, this is where everything is at. And that really hinders your ability to stand out when your product looks like every other product that's out there. Um,
mhm,
so that's definitely something to think about here, where it's like, coming up with like the colors and like the branding specific to your company and your product first, and then from there trying to build out on that, as opposed to just immediately going to one of these services and having it kind of just revert to like what everybody else is doing, because that's all
yep,
the AI is doing, right? It's taking whatever everybody else is doing and what's popular at the moment, and it doesn't have the ability to think creatively and like think outside the box or think about why your product is different, right? Like, and that's
mhm,
where you need to come in and be like, okay, well, where does my product kind of stand out, right? Or like, what is it about my product that's different? Who are my competitors? How can I make it look slightly different from like what they're doing, what they're building, in order to then stand out? Because otherwise, I mean, how are you going to compete? you know,
yeah.
I think that's something we all have to, think about is
Yeah, so
competition.
the opposite might happen here is
Hmm.
that like because we all know, right, that with these tools being accessible, so many people are just going to jump on there, forget
Hmm.
about say shooting photography, saying, "Hey, I'm going to
Right.
produce this all myself." Put it out there. So much volume and scale of content just going to go out, and it's going to become multiples. So on the other side, then someone that actually does something thoughtful,
Hmm.
tasteful, a bit different is going to really stand out in that sea of sameness.
Right.
And the person who helped produce that then is going to be more in demand, and they can push up their rates and push up their
Hmm.
fees. And so it depends how it's going to play out. My view, if I'm betting on it, is that we're going to see a lot of images looking the same, very
Hmm.
polished, very professional. And then we're going to see someone like Liquid Death coming
Oh
along
yeah.
and doing it radically different,
Yeah.
and then everyone's going to move to that trend and style.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I just saw somebody post up how one of the users that or industries that she sees doing, oh, this is a shout out to Justine Moore, who's like, really cool, kind of stays on top of what AI is doing. And she posted that one of the industries she sees using AI a lot more than others is real estate, right? And we think about the necessity there
Hmm.
to create different views of homes, right? Because it's like you have so many realtors kind of competing against each other. And, homes that like, can be boring. Like, how do you fix the lighting? How do you fix, the background? How do you make the home look better? Um, and I saw, she posted this one where it's like a video of like, flashing lights of, putting in like the text of, what the different features to the house are to make it interesting, right? In order to kind of get that attention, right? So,
Hmm.
I see them kind of like realizing, oh, like, I saw some of them doing it where it's like you would shift the background. So you have the house, what it looks like during the day, and then you have it at like sunset and at like nighttime, right? So it's kind of, have that differentiation. And then now you have it with like lights turning on and off. So you could see what the home looks like,
Mm.
right, at different like
So good.
stages. So I thought that that was like really interesting and like a really good use case, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like you want to give people more examples of like an actual thing that they can look at while still using the asset, which is the home. And so that like makes, total sense. But I don't think they've fully gotten rid of like the photographers who take the actual photos, it's just like, how do you build on top of that? Right. So that's definitely, something to think there. So a couple lessons here. Make sure that you do still have good, high quality photos of your initial product so that you do have those as like a foundation to build on top of. And then get creative from there, right? Like take those
Mhm.
ideas of like, like I mentioned with this example of like the homes, it's like, well, what is it that people want to see, right? Well, they want to see what the home looks like in different situations, right? One also featured like, this is what it looks like when you have parties, right? Like you have the fashion light. Here's what it looks like with Christmas lights on, right? And it gives people a chance to kind of imagine more than they ever would have done, right? But you're still giving them what they want, which is to see the home as it could be, right? So it's like making it aspirational, making it where they're building on their own like imagination, and it's also giving them a chance to think up stories, right? Of like, this is what I would do if I lived at this house, right? This is what the party would look like, and this is what
Yeah. Exactly. You see, you still need the base asset, right? Which is some
mhm,
really good photography of the house. And
right,
then where AI can add the value is, like you're saying, show it at different times of the day. Because I don't want to bring the photographer, the team out
right,
every hour to
every
photograph.
hour.
Different weather, like
Uh-huh.
snow, summer,
Mhm,
nighttime, morning.
mhm,
And it just, as you say, it immerses the person, the buyer, in saying, I can imagine myself living there during that, say, season or
mhm,
that weather. And that's a use case I think that's going to grow and grow. And I think we're seeing it already. I'm in Dubai, which is the
mhm,
home of real estate. It's amazing. Had a coffee with a friend a week ago that was planning an event, and he
mhm.
literally gave him the off-plan drawings 2 days before the event. He showed me the video they produced, and it was like incredible. It was like someone hired a professional drone operator to shoot it, but it was just, again, it was just AI. So
Yeah,
now we're
yeah.
putting the drone operator out of work. So we're putting
Yeah.
somebody out of work somewhere.
They were probably busy with the Olympics, right? Awesome. And then another lesson for me is to make sure that before you start using these AI tools, you have a good idea about your own brand, like the coloring, the positioning, the imaging, like what works well for your product in order to kind of retain your own values at the forefront, right? And not just start reverting to the mean, right? Obviously, this is going to be more of a thing where as you're learning how to prompt, you kind of keep that there. But I mean, a thing that you can do is just upload your brand guidelines, right? Like these are our
Mhm.
colors, these are how our fonts. So it kind of still keeps that like brand integrity without just like having the AI come up with everything. I really think like that's going to be like the differentiator here between like the brands that like still come at it from like wanting to enhance their own brand and those, companies that just kind of, use AI to come up with everything. And people are starting to become a little bit more discerning, I think, in all facets of AI.
Yeah, and I think just the one other side to this is that like people think that like if you're using AI, oh, you don't have to work anymore. You get it done in like 10 minutes, you're finished. My experience is that new work replaces the work you're doing. As in like what you're describing there, if you want to compete on the same, say, playing pitch as other brands, you're going to have to put in 10 times more effort into
Mm,
your brand guidelines, your style, your
mhm,
differentiation, where maybe you weren't putting that effort before, because the only place you can differentiate if everyone's working off the same base tools is into the pre-planning. So the
mhm,
pre-planning phase becomes huge, but you don't really save time. If you're saving
mhm.
time, you should worry. You're going in the
Yeah.
wrong direction.
I mean, I think that's what we're all learning, right? An article that just came out, I think it was on the Harvard Review or one of those journals
Yeah.
that was basically saying that AI is giving you more work to do, right? And this is the reason why, right? Because it's like
Mhm.
now you have this opportunity to be doing all these other things that you wouldn't have done before. You didn't have time, you thought it wasn't worth doing, or that you wouldn't be able to spend as much time as you
Yeah.
needed to. It's not going to replace entirely what you're doing. It's going to replace certain aspects, but you still have to come at it with like the baseline, foundation of knowledge, and like taste. I think like that's a huge thing that
Mhm.
people, particularly marketers, should keep an eye out for about like what the skills that they're learning. Yes, learn prompting, but then also go out there. Like, what are other companies doing? What are other industries doing? What are their baseline? Right. The bigger companies aren't going to be, changing their brand entirely. Right. So like, what's popular with them? Are there things that you can take from them that you can then use AI to help you enhance, and then move forward from there?
Yeah, that you're saving a load of time. Well, your competitor is using that time to invest it somewhere else that you're not investing your time. So
Mhm,
it's kind of like everyone will get to a new equilibrium, and then you still have to differentiate and put the effort
mhm,
somewhere. What I see is you got AI kind of FOMO because
mhm,
AI presents infinite opportunity. So, for example, if you're a perfectionist, AI is really bad for you
mhm.
because
Yeah,
you can keep changing that graphic, that piece of
forever.
copy forever and ever and ever. And
Uh-huh.
ChatGPT will say, like, you're so right. I should have done it
Yeah.
the last time that way. So this is where you said taste is really important because you
Mhm,
need to know when it's like done as well,
mhm, mhm.
right? And you need to
But I
let
think that's
go
the
and
perfect segue into your
yeah,
topic, right? Because this is
yeah.
like the example of what AI helps you enhance.
Yeah, like you mean you're talking about a species, right? Maybe that
Mhm.
like still cares about brands, and I'm talking going to talk about a species that doesn't really care about brands, right? um, so I'm going to be talking about OpenClaw, which has been setting the internet and the social media world on fire for the last say month. I have a personal stake in it because I've been using it for probably for at least 6 weeks. I've tried different installations of it, so I'll come back to that maybe a bit later. Everyone probably thinks it's like a chatbot. It's not. It's like it's an agent that can live on your computer. It can live on a virtual server. It's it it's basically working in the background. It can do your calendar. It can control your browser. It can join your meetings. It can write code. It can do everything a computer can do. Um, and it can do it both if you instruct it, or it can do it fully autonomous. If you search online, you will see loads of people buying Mac Minis because
Yes.
and Mac Minis are becoming like their employees and given names and stuff. So one of the ironies here is that the big winner is looking like it's Apple because they're selling more Mac Minis than ever. It was created by an Austrian developer called Peter Steinberger. He previously had his own company for around 13 years, and he sold it for, I think, I didn't disclose it, but like 100 million, something crazy. He burnt out. He took 3 years off partying, he said, seen counselors. He needed to find himself. And he came back, he said, just at the right time, not when ChatGPT launched, but maybe a year after it, because it was still pretty crappy at the start. And he began to see that, oh, this is kind of interesting. So he was playing with AI tools for the last while. He's got loads of projects up in his GitHub that he's been building. It's
Mhm.
the most famous open source project of all time. It's got something like 200,000 stars on GitHub. I think they got like 2 million visitors in 1 week alone, probably more. Um, but what makes it different is that it actually works. And why I
Mhm.
really like it is that it's not perfect. Like it's actually, as a piece of tech, it can be a bit crappy, a buggy, but it shows you where the future is going. And it
Mhm.
kind of like brings us forward into the future. And it's also really nice that it's done by this one person in Austria and not by a huge AI lab with billions of funding. Like
It's definitely the whole David and Goliath thing. People love that kind of story, right?
Massive, like, and the question is, like, why didn't these companies think of it or do it or
Yeah,
release
yeah.
it? They probably did, but large companies were into loads of like issues. Legal
Mhm.
team saying, "Hey, that's going to be a nightmare." The security team saying, "Oh, this could be used." Peter didn't care. It was just a fun
Mhm.
project for him. He was releasing
Mhm.
it, and like it's open source, and he was like of the view like, it doesn't need to be perfect, but I want this project in my life." He
Mhm.
built it for himself, and he tested it out with some close friends, and he began to see the
Took off.
potential. Yeah, he gave it to one of, he said, his normie friends, and
Mhm.
he said the normie friend doesn't even use ChatGPT. And when he set it up for him, installed it, suddenly his friend was like signing up for a Claude Max code, 200 per month subscription,
Mhm.
buying his own Mac Mini, and like this was within a week of him just installing it. So he knew he was onto something. He wasn't really in this game for money, but he ended up in a bidding war between Meta and OpenAI. He
Mhm.
had Mark Zuckerberg
This is after
WhatsApping him.
spurning Claude, right? And like Anthropic. I
Well,
mean, that
well,
was also part of the story, right?
yeah. Well, I think Anthropic like dropped the ball here
Mhm.
because I mean it's an amazing tool, but I think it's more a B2B tool than a consumer tool. And Anthropic
Mhm.
is trying to move more into that business enterprise space, and
Mhm.
OpenAI is moving to the consumer space. And Anthropic sued him for calling it Claude, so he had to change the
Yeah.
name. That's why he went to Moltbot and into OpenClaw. And then Mark Zuckerberg wanted to buy it, and
Mhm.
then OpenAI wanted it. But
Mhm.
anyway, he spurned Meta and joined OpenAI, which was interesting, because that means now that OpenAI are going to really build their products to not to skew in that direction. So where's Anthropic going to go? Where's Meta going to go? OpenClaw, it's like an internet moment, an Apple iPhone moment. This is a new interface. People, when they're building websites, need to think about who's their audience. And their audience might not be people. It could be agents coming to their website.
Mhm.
And that changes totally how you probably design a website, how you write content, how you structure content. Because you can have the best website in the world with your great brand story and your founder story, but if you don't have the product specs or the pricing in a structured way that an agent can digest it, you're not even going to be on the recommendation list. Well, I think
Oh,
that
that's
changes things in a
interesting
big way.
because yeah, I mean, if you think about all those brands, it's like you have to hop on a sales call to like,
Yeah,
find out the pricing. I mean, honestly though, bye. I hate those
gone.
websites. It's just like, just tell me the fucking price so I can know
Yeah,
what I'm getting into, what I can build,
yeah.
what I can actually do. I don't want to be jumping on sales calls. I prefer to do it like on my own time. So if it changes those things, like good riddance. I think the biggest thing that kind of stood out for me here is that it got people excited about AI in a way that was outside of just the tech bubble, which is kind of a huge
Mhm.
problem that's happening right now, right? Where it's like the fact that, Peter is able to talk about like his normie friend, getting excited to like, use Claude and use, code to like build his own thing. Like that's awesome. That's cool. Like it's getting people to like use AI in a way that isn't just like, searching for things, right? Like does
Mhm.
seem to be like this huge, differentiation between the people that use ChatGPT, kind of like a better Google search, right? And then those people that are like super in it, building new things and like, coding. And those seem to be the same startup people that were going to be coming up with ideas anyway, right? But there's
Mhm.
none of that like middle ground, right? This does seem to be more on the other side. It's still like people that have the ideas and, want to come up with something, want to build something. But at least it's like, growing the bubble a little bit more, because it's like, right now AI and like tech have this messaging problem with AI, right? You
Mhm.
have some of their founders and some, Sam coming out like it's going to change the world, it's going to do all this stuff, but then it's not really coming down to the normie audience to like see like, okay, but what's it actually doing? What benefits are there to my life? That
Yep.
should make me care about AI, especially when on the other side, you're also saying it's going to come and everyone's going to lose their job and all these industries are going to be wiped out. I do think there needs to be some sort of like education that needs to be taught, of kind of like what it means to like actually use the product, how to use it, and how it can actually, come together. Whereas like right now, it's a lot of people that are jumping in because they're interested, they have
Mhm.
the like desire and the will to like do that. Rather than like, kind of like the normies who are still, I saw somebody post that like people are still asking for like Excel help on on Instagram, right? So we need to be kind of, going after those
Yeah.
users a little bit more.
It's a broad spectrum. My friend
Hmm.
did an 8-week AI course in Dublin, and I asked him what's his thoughts on OpenClaw, and he said he'd never heard of it. So I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a reflection on my friend or a reflection on the course. So,
Yeah, I
um,
mean, yeah, it's really hard for those types of courses to kind of keep up, right? It's a huge reason why I'm like,
it's
don't go
changing
to
so
school for
fast.
like
It's
marketing, right?
yeah,
Because marketing
it,
changes so frequently. Why would you be learning old like cases? Just go do your own research. It's similar to like AI, but that's kind of where we're at now. It's like you have
yeah.
to do your own research and have that own impetus yourself. So did you buy a Mac Mini?
Not yet, but it's
Not yet.
definitely on my list potentially. Like, I mean, the way I looked at it was that it's like, if you looked at Space Odyssey 2001 with HAL, and you looked
Hmm.
at the movie Horror, like,
Hmm.
is bringing that to a reality, right? To
Hmm.
something useful. I mean, like, if you think about like how you book a hotel, right? You probably like have like humans, we all have biases. We
Hmm.
have nostalgia. There's a brand name we like. We want a social status. We want a certain thing, but agents don't really care about nostalgia or loyalty. They just, do what they want to do. If you remember in the Matrix, Agent Smith, his line,
Hmm.
what was it? Never send a human to do a machine's job.
Hmm.
You know, and there's a lot of jobs machines can do a lot better than humans, and I'm quite
Hmm.
happy the machines do it. Like what OpenClaw is, it's not like it abstracts away a lot of the complexity if it's set up
Hmm.
right, because you don't need to know what AI model is being used. Really, you don't need to know where it's going for the information if it's configured correctly. It's
Hmm.
just that it's like a super smart chat GPT that will know you and understand you. What's really different about it is that it's got a persistent memory,
Hmm.
so that it carries over knowledge from conversations. So the more you work with it, the more it gets to know you, the smarter it gets, the more nuanced it gets. But if you go into its configuration files, it's got like a soul.md file. So you can
Hmm.
define its soul. So I feel like I'm Dr. Frankenstein creating my claw with a personality that I wanted to have and behave the way I wanted to behave. You give it's got an identity file. So it's got like, say, and you have to put in your file as well, the user file. So you're telling the agent like who you are and what soul, how you want to operate. So the experience you get when you work with it over a period of time is totally unique, and it can be totally customized to you. And then you give it access to different tools. Um, and where I've seen kind of the big difference was that when, like, I've set it up for two instances. I set up for my friend's business. They have kind of a small, say, boutique marketing agency, and I've set it up for myself. For myself, it's nice. It feels like a toy. I don't really like need it that much. It could be useful. It could be like a second brain maybe. But for their business, it's a total game changer for them, because they have like 6 to 8 people. They're overworked. They got too many clients. They're so busy. But what they're doing now is using this to systemize, document, study all the brand guidelines, study all the client documents, all the projects, manage their Trello. Because I set it up for them kind of like a remote employee. So it never gets near any sensitive information. So if you think like you just hired a remote employee, the easiest way to psychologically see that is have a Mac Mini and just say that that's your remote employee.
Hmm.
But for me, I
Mm.
set it up in the cloud because I was still testing things. But you can integrate it into Slack, you integrate it into WhatsApp, you integrate it to Telegram. You give it rules of what it can and can't do. So what we did is we gave it its own Gmail account, gave it its own company signature, gave it its Gmail Drive, Google Drive access, gave it access, say, to certain shared folders, which were like, say, like brand guidelines for clients. And it just makes life a lot easier for like, owners of that company to get information when they need it, check the status of a project, get files, run up new templates. It becomes like a chief of staff, a COO combined with an EA that actually doesn't really forget anything. And this is just the first instance of the technology. That's why it's exciting. So that
Mhm, mhm.
imagine now what someone like Peter can do if he's got the backing of OpenAI and gets gifted 20 engineers to work with him. This type of product can be pretty exceptional. Um, so it's kind of interesting to see where this is going to end up. But I feel that where we're going is that you're building for two types of worlds. You're either building and optimizing for machines, or you're building or optimizing for humans. And when it comes to OpenClaw, it makes brands kind of irrelevant on one hand, but it makes brands very important on the other hand. So, for example, I was thinking today going to work, I was looking around because Dubai is a city that's very well designed, it's very structured, got main roads, and every side of the road there's like these big billboards. And I've always kind of felt like billboards will never really work. I'll never buy anything off billboards. But I'm thinking, if I'm using OpenClaw and I'm not really thinking about brands that much, the only place someone can reach me is in the real world. So
Mhm,
billboards become the prompt to humans to prompt their agents to go
mhm,
search.
mhm.
So brands will have to spend a lot more time in the real world with their products, whether that's product placement or experiential or billboards, than in the digital world. The digital world might become more for agents than humans.
I do wonder because you do have people, both sides, right? Where it's like you want people, people are wanting to have more IRL experiences. Also, it seems as if like digital worlds could become more interesting to people, where it's like a gated community where you keep out AI, where you keep out, agents, right? It's just like
Mhm.
human only, like that you get verified to get in,
Ah,
right? Kind of like we saw with like Ready Player One or No Crash, Neil Stevenson's,
no, gosh, yeah.
um, that like a lot of the tech people know, where it's like the whole idea of like going into digital spaces and being able to be there with other humans, right? So I do see that being a thing. Another thing here that this brings to mind is how much more important it is going to be to kind of like what you're saying. You have billboards, but you also have TV commercials, right? The Super Bowl ads are probably going to become more and more
Yes.
like popular, right? First, it's the whole idea of a monoculture. This is one of the few times that people have to be watching the same thing at the same time, right? So then I think that's going to spill over into other sports events. So I talked about this in an essay I had where I talked about other sporting events that are going to become more and more popular, particularly when they're in the US, right? So we have the World Cup in the summer here. We also have the Olympics in LA in 2028. The Super Bowl, I think, is going to keep growing. Other sports, the World Series, March Madness, all that is going to become where companies are going to be investing in ad space because they know that they need to get people offline to think about their product
Yeah.
and their brands, right? And I think that's where like the feeling is still going to become relevant. That nostalgia, that like brand story, the how customers are using your product and love it. So I agree that like online, it's going to be a little different. Your website might not be as relevant. I mean, how relevant is it these days, right? Like, what are people going to websites for? You need to make sure that like your website is like up to date and has like everything and like your positioning and stuff. And it should, because you are going to need the agents to be able to go through that. But I think there are other aspects of like your brand story and positioning that you need to start like looking at, and what sorts of like ads can you be doing that are aside are not part of like your website per se, but like lead people to other ways to find your product.
Well, it's like what you said earlier, Apple teaming up with Formula One, right? That's a perfect
Hmm.
example. We've seen
Right.
more and more crossover brands going into real world events. Sport is like that monoculture opportunity, where people come together,
Hmm.
which is so often, right? So I think that's going to be really big. I think, and also we've already been designing like websites for bots for a long time, and a very famous bot, the Google bot, right? So
Hmm.
everyone's been optimizing their website for Google. It's just that
Hmm.
now there's going to be maybe 1,000 Googles coming that
Hmm.
are equally important to design for.
Awesome. So one of the things that I think, companies have a huge opportunity to do is what Spotify is doing with Bad Bunny. Spotify is bringing Billions Club Live to Asia for the first time in Japan, with Bad Bunny headlining a one-off invite-only show for the top listeners in Tokyo on March 7th. It's leveraging Bad Bunny breaking another record. He now has 28 tracks in Spotify's Billion Club. He's the number one global artist in 2025 for the fourth consecutive year. At the Super Bowl, got 128.2 million views across all platforms. What I thought was really interesting here is what they're doing with their own internal data, right? Like this is Spotify saying like, we have these numbers, we track the users, we know what people are listening to, and then making concert great. Who should be invited? Well, let's make it the top listeners of like the artists, right? They're the ones that should be emphasized here, which also brings it back to Spotify, right? Because now it's like, well, do you want to have an opportunity to go to one of these like really cool events? Well, you got to listen to your favorite artist on the platform more, right? They haven't gotten to the point where they're doing like exclusive concerts or ticket sales. That's still kind of like in Ticketmaster's domain, much to the chagrin of most everybody, I think, because people still really hate Ticketmaster. But this is kind of an avenue that they can take, going forward. And I see it as a way of them realizing, hey, here's what we can be doing to keep people on our platform. They're starting to have people move over to Apple, even though, Spotify is like the main place that people like listen to. This is also on top of their Spotify Wrapped every year, losing quality and losing the attention from users. Even we talked about that here.
You've
Martin, have you
just
seen
given
this?
me, yeah,
Mhm.
you just given me an amazing use case for my OpenClaw. So my OpenClaw
Mm.
is called Frank. So I'm going to tell Frank spawn up 1,000 of his sub-agent friends, get onto Spotify, listen to the favors for the next month, and get me into that top 1%.
That's funny. Yeah.
But I think what's interesting here though is that, like, I mean, look, what Spotify have done isn't rocket science, right? I
Hmm.
mean, they've looked at their data, they are rewarding their top 1%, but thousands of brands have this data sitting in their
Hmm.
CRM doing nothing, and they choose not to use it. Like, there's a difference between gating an event and calling it exclusive and actually finding your true fans and giving
Hmm.
them an experience, because what Spotify have done is from the 1% who actually love them, and
Hmm.
they're only going to love them more. And the other 99% are going to be jealous that they're not in the 1%. And they're going to have people like me working out how to use their OpenClaw to get into that 1% for the
Hmm.
next time Bad Bunny is in Tokyo. So
Hmm. Yeah.
I think what they're doing is great, and but I just think more brands are sitting on gold mines and are not using their CRM data.
Yeah, definitely. So this is a huge lesson, I think, for brands. It's like, what are you doing with that data? You have it there. You know what your users are looking at. You know what they're searching for. You know your top products. You know what people are interested in. But I think another thing here is like where you're rewarding your actual fans, right? I think I see it every so often. People complain that like discounts or referral codes only really support either new time customers or people that are leaving, right? At
Yeah.
which point it's just like, what are you doing here, right? Like you need to start rewarding your actual fans with exclusive things. Your email programs should become reward programs for
Hmm.
your top users, right? Which helps you create like a better cycle for open rates and like getting people to click and interact with both your email, but then your website and your product sites, like so that like you're not just chasing new users all the time, right? Most of us have the data on like what the lifetime value is for like our consumers, and that's without us helping them. And then maybe this changes the amount that you need to be doing sales, right, and giving discounts, right, where it's like maybe you're not giving sales to everybody and diminishing the value of your product, but only to your top users who are going to buy your
Hmm.
product anyway but should be rewarded for it. We need to flip and invert how we're treating current users. That's better served with like your current consumers and having them then become like the megaphone for your brand to bring you in new users.
Yeah, I mean, like in Ireland, we've a saying that like a quiet priest never got a parish. So it's like, you know, brands only look at like the customers making noise, either customers they want to acquire to grow or customers that are
Mhm.
threatening to leave and churn, but never
Mhm.
the one that's just like sleeping kind of and doing good business in the middle. They're kind
Mhm.
of forgotten most of the time, but that's where your real customers are and the ones that
Mhm.
deserve to be rewarded. Like banks are terrible for this. But banks like will give
Mhm.
discounts at higher rates to new customers,
Right.
but their existing customer for 10 years is getting the old crappy rate.
Mhm. I mean,
So
cable companies, right? Phone
yeah.
companies, companies like that, where it's like, you only really get a discount when you threaten to leave. It's very stupid. Something else to think about here is like, what are those moments that you can glom onto, right? So Spotify here is jumping onto the fact that like Bad Bunny just had his Super Bowl performance, that he's still on the world tour, that he's like the most popular artist of 2025, and then using that to then catapult themselves into this like new place where people are paying attention because it's like, Bad Bunny. So it's like using those moments to also insert yourself and give yourself more attention than you would have done otherwise.
I worked at something like this way back. We'd taken over sponsorship of an international rugby competition. We were a digital bank and we
Hmm.
didn't have huge budgets because we were a challenger bank taking on larger ones. And one of the strategies we had was like our core strategy was always the customer, being direct, straight talking, getting to the customer. So we aimed at rugby being more direct, and we created at that time it was Twitter, a leaderboard on Twitter,
Mm.
based on the fan engagement within the competition. So if we were in the stadium, you got points if you tweeted with the right hashtag. You got points if you posted a photo. You got more points. So we were aiming to find like the top 20 fans of the competition in the grassroots, and then if you were top of the league table, we allowed them to present man of the match live on
Mm.
TV, any games. And then in the final, the winner got to come to the final, experience a VIP trip. But the results we got was that we were one of the fastest recognized brand names in the sport compared to any other sponsor that
Hmm.
came in. And it's kind of just doing that, like just literally going
Yeah.
like, who are the people that really matter? And let's try and focus on them as opposed to the people who don't care, trying to convince
Yeah,
them to
yeah, yeah,
care.
yeah. Exactly. No, this is great. So many ideas here.
Yeah.
The other things that to think about is like, can they have shoppable live streams? Is there like limited co-branded merch? Merch is super cool, right? Are there local brand collabs that they can be doing at the like events? Are there creator co-hosted watch parties from like influencers
Mhm.
online? There's going to be all these other things that you can do going forward.
Yeah, so it's still on the entertainment lines. Does AI generate creative work belong in the same venues as human created work? And this kind of blew up, I think, recently with AMC. There was an AI film competition, and the producer and creator of the film was a Kazakhstani guy named Igor Alferov, I think.
Hmm.
The competition was run by a company called Screen Vision, and he created this kind of short animation around Thanksgiving Day. I haven't seen it. I've seen some clips of it. It looked really good. Like, I mean, it looked like, I mean, I wouldn't have known like too easily if it was AI. You kind of see the tells, but it looked
Hmm.
pretty good. It won. It won by a public vote. It was made by Gemini and Nano Banana Pro. Same model as Google Pomelli. But Screen Vision, like the prize was then that he got to show his short 30-minute, say, movie in AMC studios as a cinemas as a pre-show. So like, not like you're coming to the cinema to see this. It's just like, it was a kind of given to show before some other films, right? So,
Wait, so
but
AMC knew this and then just pulled out, or?
AMC are claiming they didn't know it, right? AMC are saying like that, like, so much is happening. They don't know all these things
Oh,
that
so,
are
like,
going on.
Screen Vision is okay, so Screen Vision, yeah, they run the ads before the
Yes,
show.
correct. Yeah,
Interesting. Okay,
yes. And
okay.
apparently it was shown in some cinemas before this whole, like, say, drama kicked off. And there was a load of, like, say, I think, uh, online sites and social media
Yeah.
accounts saying that
So it was
this
only
has
gonna
no
run on
soul.
those 30% that Screen Vision actually, or
Yeah,
across all
correct. No,
AMCs?
no, just the 30% of
Oh,
Screen
wow.
Vision, like, we're running it.
Mhm,
And the whole debate was like, that it has no soul, I mean, like, that this should not be shown. And
mhm,
which is kind of strange, right? Because it's produced by a human.
mhm,
Igor wrote it. He crafted the frames that were used in the AI
mhm,
modeling. He produced the whole story, the characters. Everything was human inspired. He just used AI as his production studio. I think he called it like an exoskeleton for the mind, right? So I was thinking about it today, going, okay, well, like, okay, this is it. Does this mean like Pixar is
Mhm.
like soulless, you know?
Yeah,
But
is
is
it
that
just the
better just because
animation
more
bit?
humans worked on it than one human
Yeah.
worked on it?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah, I
AI
think
was
it's
used in
a
Pixar.
yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. I think it comes down to people's lack of understanding of where AI kind of fits in, right? When I first saw this come up and they're like, "Oh, it's like an AI, movie." It was just reminding me of all those, tweets showing like a scene from the Matrix, right? Like this costs,
Mhm.
$10 million for the Matrix to make, and it costs like a percentage of that here. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, but it stole what the Matrix already did and just redid this scene, here that like looks shitty because like there's no background, there's nothing. It's just, Agent Smith and Neo fighting. And then so that's what I think of when, AI film, comes to mind. It isn't, this man coming up with the story, doing the frame by frame shoots, and then just using AI to help him um animate what he wouldn't have been able to do himself. Um so it kind of seems a little bit more like we saw with OpenClaw, right? Where you have like
Mhm.
builders kind of coming together and building projects that they wouldn't have been able to do before because they didn't have the engineering support. But people don't understand that, right? They don't understand the difference between, what is AI slop versus what is, a project that's being enhanced by AI. And I think that's definitely something that, needs to be spoken about from people that do you use AI and are advocating for it.
Yeah, well, we have. I mean, I'm just thinking. Now we have this happening in the past. Remember the Bob Dylan film, right? And his
Mm,
history of going from, say,
that's right, the
folk
music.
music to
Oh,
electric.
yes,
I
you're
mean,
right.
this caused a lot of uproar. I went back into some history because I thought, what else is kind of like an AI movie? Cartoons,
Mhm,
animations. And I went back to when Snow White came out first. There was a huge drama that Disney had lost his mind,
mm,
that he was like, I think he was betting his mortgage, everything on this one
mhm,
film, and all the media and the critics said nobody's ever going to watch this.
mhm,
It became one of the most rewarding, famous
mhm,
productions ever produced. And the other side of it is that was released in 1937. Animation didn't make it into the Oscars until 2002.
mhm,
So it took a long time to be adopted into really and accepted into the mainstream. And there's another instance from history, if you go back further, it's the Luddites, but they weren't anti technology at all. These were very skilled people using machines. What they were
mhm,
anti was losing their livelihood and losing their
mhm.
careers and losing their job.
Sound familiar?
Yeah. And the question is like, what debate are we having? Is it like about
Mhm,
the craft or about livelihoods? And
mhm,
these people complaining online, was it general public or was it the people in the industry complaining online to slow
mhm.
this down? And I think that's an interesting debate to have, but people are mixing the two debates together because I think the craft can exist independently. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to have an impact on people's lives. And what does that mean is something that does need to be like teased out and understood.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of just everything that we've been talking about here. As I'm kind of thinking about the through line, one of the takeaways for me is this whole idea of craft versus AI. We've seen it before in terms of like, Coca-Cola doing their AI commercial and then like
Oh,
Apple
yeah.
doing their, latest version with the cut glass,
Did you
right?
see the
And the colors
McDonald's
and
one for
lighting.
Christmas?
Yeah, right. Yeah, which it
Yeah.
was quickly taken down, right? And I
It
think
was so creepy.
right. And then I think like that's the thing here where it's like because people are seeing very bad examples of AI slop,
Mhm.
they're a little hesitant to give a bit of grace to, craftspeople that are coming up with, creative stories and using AI to help enhance that, right? Um and I think that that's part of what's getting lost in the narrative.
I mean, I have a theory and I wrote a Substack on it that every
Mhm.
company now needs to hire a designated hater. Like this
Yeah,
person needs to be
that's right.
independent and very well paid and cannot get fired by
Uh-huh.
the owners of the company. And this person's job, all they have to do is do not release that crap.
Yeah.
And that is a piece of crap. Do not release it. And
Yeah, no, I
because
agree.
as these tools become more accessible, people will get overconfident, think they're amazing, start releasing stuff. You're going to have the executive who goes home in the evening saying, "I'm now a creative director and I'm going
Yeah.
to release the ad company at home." So like this is going to be interesting. So every company needs like instead of they're going to need a cybersecurity person and a designated taste hater.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, one thing that came from Sam Altman speaking this week about how, another entity that also needs to be trained and takes years is our humans. And I thought this is not a winning argument. This is not
No,
how you pair up against what people are afraid of, AI coming and taking their jobs by saying, well, who needs to be trained is, humans. And it's like in America where people very famously do not want to help finance the training of humans, whether through college, through like trade programs, like saying that AI also needs to be trained and that we should be, give grace to that, I think is like the wrong thing to be, thinking. And I think, kind of based off what you're saying, Martin, about having that designated hater, we're seeing where founder led comms and like marketing can fail because they can be
yeah.
so in their head
Oh,
about,
yeah.
how cool the technology is that they miss the human. Oh,
I mean, if you
definitely,
go,
definitely. This is
if you in big tech, if you go back to the metaverse, Mark
Mhm.
Zuckerberg, that was
Right,
another
right, right,
time
right.
when a designated hater was needed to be on the team to
Mhm.
say like, this is so bad, do not do it. And you're right. Sam Altman definitely needs to hire a designated hater because
Mhm.
did you see his response to the Anthropic ad? It was like an essay,
Oh my
kind of.
God, yeah.
If you're explaining, you're losing. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I
uh,
know, it
uh,
reminded me of the Tywin thing. If you have to say that you're king, you are no king, It's just like
exactly.
you can't. Yeah. Like why even pay attention? Yeah, it was horrible. Both him and his CMO, I was like, "What are you doing? This is
Exactly.
not the right
Just like
response."
someone online, Greg, who I follow on X, had a really brilliant response, and he was right.
Mhm.
He should be their CMO. I don't know if you watch Mad Men, but there's a
Mm,
scene with
right.
Don Draper when he's in the
Mhm.
lift, and he's with one
Yep.
of these like upcoming creatives that's competing with
Yeah,
him,
yeah.
and he's telling Don what he should have done. He should have done
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
and Don just looks around to him and says, "I don't think about you at all."
Yeah.
That's what OpenAI should have done to
Should have
Anthropic.
done. They
We
should
don't
have
think
kept
about you
quiet.
at all
Yeah.
because we are so much bigger.
Yeah, no, no, no. I totally agree because right after that, when the Super Bowl aired their ads, what we got back was that only 7% of people knew what, Anthropic and Claude are. And then on top of that only 3% of people thought that it was a good commercial. So if they had just let
Exactly.
it all play out, they would have come out on top and not looked petty and small on top
Yeah.
of it.
But also, if you want to see what stage of the hype cycle we're in, check out Y Combinator podcast from yesterday, where everybody was dressed up as a lobster.
Yeah, I saw that too. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Martin, for joining me. Please let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I think just you can find me on X at Martin O'Leary or on my Substack. This is Uncharted. So thanks, Sonia. It's fun. See you next time.
Thank you. And then you can follow me at Sonia Bashez everywhere and the podcast at Meme Team Pod on YouTube and then Meme Team Podcasts on Spotify and TikTok. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Uh,